You're listening to Indiana Jones and the Comics Crusade on the LONGBOX CRUSADE NETWORK. Hello and welcome to Indiana Jones and the Comics Crusade. I'm your host, Jared Albrecht, the Yard Sale Artist, and I will be taking you on an adventure with me as I index all 34 issues of 1983's The Further Adventures of Indiana Jones by Marvel Comics. On this episode, we will be taking a look at issue number 2. Issue 2 was cover dated February of 1983. Its script was by Denny O'Neil, layouts by John Byrne, inks Terry Austin, letterer is Janice Shang, colorist is Bob Sharon, and editor is Louise Jones. Now let's take a look at the cover description. It is drawn by John Byrne and inked by Al Milgram. The Marvel Comics Group banner is green with black letters, and Indiana Jones stands pistol ready in his green corner box. The title logo is white with orange highlights, and the main action depicts Indiana Jones tied to Edith Dune, and they're both dangling from a chain, about to be lowered into a pit of molten gold as some local tribesmen look on. And now for a quick story synopsis. The story begins with Edith and Indy about to meet their demise by being dipped into molten gold. Luckily for the pair, Solomon Black and his men attack the native village and cause a distraction which allows Indy to swing the pair to safety. Indy must join forces with Mr. Black to escape the island, but in the end, Indy and Edith are prisoners of the greedy Mr. Black, as his men plunder the ancient city for its gold statues. Edith uses her feminine charms to distract their guard, and Indy gets a radio transmission out just before the radio is destroyed with a bullet. The radio transmission was received by a German U-boat, and the Germans sink Black's ship. Indy and Edith are saved along with one gold statue. Since the story takes place pre-World War II, the Germans give Edith and Dr. Jones a ride back to New York, where the pair catch a plane. During the plane ride, Indiana reveals that he's pieced together that Edith has been behind everything all along. She didn't care that her brother got murdered. All she ever had was her greed for the golden statues and a desire for fame. Indiana uses a sacred ancient language to awaken the gold statue in the airplane, which only craves vengeance. And then Indy leaps out of the plane via parachute to let the treacherous Edith and her pilot accomplice deal with the unstoppable menace. Okay, we are back down in the Temple of Longbox, and I want to welcome this episode's special guest. He's no stranger to the Longbox Studios. I don't know if he's ever been down to the temple here, but it is Longbox Crusade founder Pat Sampson, a.k.a. DJ Kristatos. Welcome to the Temple of Longbox.
Well, Jared, it's great to be here. I like that you cleaned up the temple area. Hopefully there's no snakes or anything, but I want to get a little bit closer to you, so if you could please just throw me the whip.
You throw me the idol, and I'll throw you the whip.
Well, you throw me the whip first, and then I'll give you the idol.
Well, you know what? We'll work this out.
Give you the, and by idol, I mean the cookies I brought down, so we could have some.
Okay. All right, here's the whip then.
Okay.
You know what? There's only been 2 people to be down in the temple.
Oh.
My brother Jason was here last time. And Clinton Robeson found his way in here once, and I still don't know where he is. I don't know. But Pat and I are about to talk, of course, about Further Adventures of Indiana Jones issue 2. As you guys have already heard, I've done a cover description and a story description. So let's start with that cover, Pat. And when you and I talked about, just doing this show, you were like, cover 2 is burned into my brain. Like, I know exactly what it looks like. You don't have to describe it to me. So, just give me your thoughts on the cover and what you see, what it means to you, what tickles your nostalgia. What do you got, man?
Oh, boy, Jared. There is so much about this one that when you mentioned this, I'm like, oh, cover 2 it's my jam. It's the cover that started it all for me for Indiana Jones, the comics. I already loved Raiders of the Lost Ark, so getting to get some further stuff with Indiana Jones in it, this was just something. When I saw it, and I saw this issue, and I have it yet till this day, I saw this issue at the PDQ I talk about it's the convenience store, like, the little convenience store that I would ride my bike down to and look at the rack that was there. It wasn't really a rack. It was like a shelf. They didn't really have a rack, but they, had the shelf of comic books. And when I saw Indiana Jones, like, oh man, I need to get this one, 60 cents for the cover. So cost me some candy, but I think it was worth it in the end.
And Definitely. This was your first issue? You missed number 1?
I missed number 1. Yeah. I didn't see that in the PDQ. So I'm assuming if some other kid didn't have it, there's maybe 1 or 2, because it was a small convenience store. So they weren't like buying tons of them. Okay. You'd only have 1 or 2 of the same issue there. So if it was gone, it was gone. And I didn't know anywhere else to go to get this stuff. So happy I got it. And I would just pour over and over on this one. It's very striking cover where you have Indy and the lady, they're being over the pit of molten hot lava or something.
Gold. Gold.
Yeah. Over molten gold that they're going to get probably dipped in. Just that striking kind of angle that's there, rankish a little bit.
Yeah.
And the artwork is very well done. And it's a John Byrne cover. So, it's like, oh, this is John. At the time, I didn't know that,
Right.
But now that you know who Byrne is, like, oh, really? John Byrne drew that cover? And I've been staring at it all the time when I was a kid. It just, the purple, the colors, you can just feel the heat of coming off of that gold. Just so how much that it's kind of lit up around the blackness.
They use a lot of black, and that might be the inker, which was Al Milgrom on this. But yeah, it's pretty cool. Just a fun fact for you that you might not have known that Jason and I covered back on the last episode. We covered issue 1. If you're like me and Jason, we both sort of had this assumption that was a Byrne cover too, but that was actually, number 1 was actually his longtime inker, Terry Austin, did that cover.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And it's so funny because like if you were to ask us on the street, I would have been like, it's a Byrne. Absolutely. But you're absolutely right. Issue 2 is Byrne with $10 Al Milgrom.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of funny that they're being low into molten lava and it's by Byrne.
What a burn there. Ooh. That is interesting that Byrne didn't do that first one. And because that's just that, Indiana Jones with his whip out.
Yeah, it's kind of a very iconic looking book. And it was Terry Austin's work. So that was kind of neat thing that Jason and I dug up on the last episode. But I'm in full agreement with that rakish angle and the whole, pending doom. I'm amazed they did Indy with no hat. I always thought that was interesting. But, I guess they took his hat, they took his whip. He could not put his hand on his whip. When they dip, you dip.
Dipped in.
We dip. Yeah.
Of course. Why, you would do that. It's interesting with this series of what they would do, because was there going to be another movie? Was there not?
Mm-hmm.
It's in that era, kind of like Star Wars was a little bit earlier on when they went to the comics. It's like, okay, well, now we can tell some more adventures. Or
one movie to go on.
Yeah.
Yep. With Jason, I talked a little bit about this on last episode. This is just a reminder for people who are listening, or if this is your first time, welcome. This series comes out before Temple of Doom, about a year out. So, yeah, Pat's absolutely right. It's in that no man's land where they're kind of guessing
what Indy would be, what he's doing, who's doing, all around him, who's his friends, and just it's cool, I think, and just the further adventures of what they call that. You don't have that now, so to say, classic Indiana Jones title that you would, see later on, that everybody sees that title and, oh, that's Indiana Jones, that the fade from red to
the big arc,
and the arc, and the minute you say Indiana Jones title, everybody sees that
font. Yeah, it's right there in your brain. But this one's a little different.
A little bit different. Point. But I loved it. Just love it so much. These issues have some pretty cool iconic covers. And like you said, this one is definitely an iconic cover personally for me.
Yeah, of course. If this is your first time as a kid going, holy crap, there's an Indiana Jones comic book. I got to have it, That was basically Jason's origin story, by the way, for issue 1. He saw it on the spinner and was like, I got to have this. Jason said something like, Mom was either going to buy it for me or I was going to steal it. That was basically what Jason said.
Oh, yeah.
Well, let's open that cover and get on the inside. I do think it's super cool that you see it on that spinner rack and it calls out to you. And that's awesome. As soon as you open it up to the first page, it's really a kick because they're dangling on the cover. You open the first page and there they are. dangling over the pit. It's almost like except he is wearing his hat.
He is wearing his hat and his jacket.
Mm-hmm. But it's really kind of neat how the cover opens and you're just there. You're just right there. That's going to take us into the story. So it's that time, Pat, of highs, lows, and what does, and there's no one else here, so you don't have to be super polite and save stuff for everybody else. Let's just get into your list.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and start with the artwork on this one. Again, it's John Byrne also, doing the layouts on this one with Terry Austin as the inker as well. So what can you say with this artwork that's in? It's just really well done. Indy, is it Harrison Ford looking? No, but I think the features and just the iconic stuff, the hat, the scruffiness, I'm okay with it. I'm like, I'm fine.
I've had a long-standing theory that I stand beside that says they got the rights to Indiana Jones, but they did not get the likeness rights to Harrison Ford because they never do that, except Temple of Doom comes out, and then I think they got likeness rights for that because he looks very Harrison Ford in the Temple of Doom adaptation.
I was going to say in the comic adaptation, yeah.
So I'm really sold on the fact that when they got the Further Adventures of Indiana Jones rights, it was just to the character and not to Harrison Ford. And I think they play close enough. And Indiana Jones is not necessarily a character that I think you have to make look exactly like Ford to carry it off.
No, I don't think so. And that makes a good point. Is I think even if they decide to do something with the movies now, I think I'd be all right with it. Just it's got to be a guy that's got some actiony features to himself. But I think as long as you got the right iconic stuff, the leather jacket, the hat, and the whip, I'd be down.
Yeah, it could be very much like James Bond, where someone else could pick it up. I know for a while they talked about Chris Pratt picking it up, and I'm perfectly okay with that.
Yeah, get a good story. The rest can be sold.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Speaking of story, what else you got in here?
This, again, is the second part of the story. So you kind of get a feeling of what's going on and how they got here. But it's really, to me, feels like an Indiana Jones adventure. You had the cliffhanger, and now you're coming off of that cliffhanger, and you're going to see the rest of how it happens. Indy's stuck in a situation. Will he get out? Will he not get out? Will he get dipped or will he not dip? And if he dips, who dips with him and who doesn't dip with him? Yeah,
I know.
Do we all dip? I don't know. I like how he got out of it, though, because he's like, we need a miracle. And the girl's like, well, what do we need? And now what are we going to do? He's like, well, I'm looking. She's like, is this the miracle? Because they get bombed. Just really cool how he gets out of the situation, swinging, and then, typical. I can just hear the music.
Yep. High adventure is definitely there.
Yeah. And the panel, how that's being laid out. Awesome. I just keep going back through here and how many times I have kind of read this one. It's been a while since I've read this, so it was great to come back to it and reread it again. I like the foe.
Who, like Solomon Black?
Yeah.
Oh, he's great. He's such a cool villain. I wish you could translate to the movies because he's not so typical. He
kind of reminds me of the Kingpin.
Yeah, and he kind of thinks that way. Like he thinks on a higher level. Very clever. And
you have Indiana trying to outwit him, which Indiana Jones would kind of do until he has to use brute force. But he's also, he's a smart guy. Indiana Jones is a smart guy. So he is trying to outwit Black on this game of chess, right? Even telling him at one point, hey, well, if you shoot me, then you're not going to be able to decipher or translate the rest of these idols and all that's on there. And Black's like, okay, well, I kind of need to get more of the stuff. So, okay, I'll let you live for now. Where Indy's like, well, there's nothing on there. So he's just trying to stay alive as much as he can until he can figure out another way out. You have the damsel in distress, the girl that's with him, and how that story kind of plays out.
Oh, Edith Stune. Yeah, she was just, save me, Indy, and all this and that. And I like how in issue 1, which you didn't have, the way Burns originally draws her, she's very bookwormish and kind of nerdy. and she just gets prettier and prettier as the story goes.
Gets that burn, and then
as
burn.
as it gets to the point where they use her attractiveness to
her feminine wiles, to
divert a guard so that they can make a move. And then the big reveal at the end, Pat.
Yeah.
She was behind it all.
Yeah, she's the villain the whole time.
She was the villain the whole time.
She killed her brother.
Tell you what.
And I liked how that played out too. How you're like, oh, yeah. They do a little quick flashback.
They do like the Scooby-Doo quick flashback,
I knew it was you and you shot at the radio and that. And I thought that was very interesting how they did that and how Indy called her out at it. Just a good overall story on this one, I feel. Yeah.
The only thing I'll add, a couple things. I thought, well, first of all, it was neat that, they knew their history and their points in time. And so they actually get saved by a Nazi.
I was wondering about that.
And the Nazis are nice enough to give them a ride back to New York.
All the way back to, New York. And then, okay, here you go. We're going to drop you off now.
And then Indy's a jerk to him at the end.
He's a jerk to him when he gets picked up.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you can't do nothing to me. And even though we haven't started our war yet, so you got to do this. And I'm like, wow.
And then they're like nice enough to take him all the way back to New York. And the German captain says, I have enjoyed our talks. And he said, I wish I could say the same.
Makes you wonder what they were actually.
Oh, my goodness. No one's going to get mad if you're a jerk to the Nazis, right? The Nazis are the most hated bad guys of all time. But I still think it's funny. They gave him a ride all the way across the Atlantic Ocean.
A month later, it said. So he didn't stay with them for a month.
He's like, I never liked you. And we talked a little bit about this on the first episode too with Jason, just that dash of supernatural that makes Indiana Jones a little spooky, never was it more probably spooky than Temple of Doom in the movie universe. But here he actually was able to do the incantation that wakes up the vengeful golden statue that was once a man that had been dipped in gold, and it wakes him up like a zombie.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that was kind of cool. The only thing I didn't really like was they kind of introduced Edith Dune's partner was this pilot guy, like out of nowhere. Like he wasn't in nothing.
Yeah. I was like, where's this guy?
Moment. Yeah, that was just a little weird. And then Indy does a lot of like exposition as he's getting ready to jump out of the like he wakes up the villainous zombie statue. He talks for like a Claremontian amount of time as he gets ready to jump out of here.
Just wait a minute. This guy's got to get up. The zombie's a little bit slow and he's gold. So he's got to get out the kinks there for him to kind of come out and do it. And then, his thought too. So if this thing cannot die, right? Getting shot at and all that, what's going to happen when he goes over the ocean and the plane crashes over the ocean when it runs out of gas and all that?
I assume it sinks to the bottom and maybe one day wanders up on land somewhere.
Could be. I don't know. I don't know. Obviously, the boyfriend and Edith don't get around, or does he just go back to sleep? Or I don't know.
I don't know. But it was a neat plot twist ending, especially when you were a kid. Like, what? Oh, my goodness. It was the girl. What?
It was a good flip of the story. Kind of reminds me of The Last Crusade.
True.
The girl was eventually she's all part of it all. What? She's part of this?
Maybe
go between them.
Maybe they read this and went, you know what? Let's make the girl the Last Crusade. Who knows?
And these would be really good stories. I think we talked about this as we covered some other Indiana Jones ones. Is let's do a cartoon. Turn these comics into a half an hour cartoon. This could actually be a 2-parter.
Yeah.
It would be kind of cool.
Jason and I mentioned last episode, maybe a TV show, but a cartoon, a good animated show. Yeah, why not? Why not?
TV show. And it always remind me of, I know we talked about this too, the Gold Monkey.
Tales of the Gold Monkey, yeah.
Yeah, it was always kind of my this is my Indiana Jones kind of a...
Oh, absolutely.
Feel to it vibe that I liked as well too. So, yeah, just a fun, great story as a kid to have this stuff and just open your mind up a little bit more, and you get to see a little better world of Indiana Jones.
Oh, the heyday when you had, just a very few comics, so you would just read and reread. This definitely would fall into that because, I had this comic as well thanks to Jason. You had it from the PDQ, and I bet you did like me and read it
a ton of times.
A zillion times.
This is, believe it or not, from collecting these, I am all but one issue away from having the full series.
Oh, that's pretty sweet. And once you do that, maybe you can get them hardbound like I was
thinking about doing. I am just missing the last issue, which is probably the hardest to find, or at least the more expensive one to find.
A lot of times that's the case because last issue gets a lower print run. That may be it. I'm not even sure where I picked up my last issue. Most of these I got in bundles. Just out of curiosity, since I'm extra fancy, mine are hardbound. I have all the adaptations first, and then I have the further adventures comes after those in my binding. Do you have the adaptations as well, or are you just kind of strictly trying to get the further adventures?
I would like the adaptations. I think I do have the adaptations. I think you sent me the adaptations, the bigger size one of Raiders.
Oh, yeah? I'm a nice guy.
You are. I believe I got that from you. The larger
Marvel Premiere magazine.
The magazine one. But I do have Temple, and I do have Last Crusade.
Very cool. Well, looking at this issue, we've talked cover and we've talked story and memories. Anything inside, extra stuff that jumped out at you? Anything from the letter pages or an ad or anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, there was an ad that stood out to me. It was Spider-Man. It's kind of like those fruit pie ads.
Yeah.
Kind of selling something, but instead of fruit pies, he's selling those kind of Rubik's cubic kind of snake-like
magic
puzzle,
snake or something.
Magic snake puzzles. Yeah,
magic snake puzzle. I think that's what it was.
Yeah, and you would kind of twist and turn this into a snake or
I remember it was a weird. I remember this toy. Yeah, and you try to get it to back into the crystal ball shape.
Yeah, back into the crystal-y kind of shape, and it was white and green. I had one as a kid, so that's why it stands out to me. Is I remember having this one. I don't know if we got it as like a Christmas present or something. What is gamey puzzle things that you would sit and just because it had the angles, they had the triangles, and they would move, and just fun to play with and kind of put back from snake to that. So that's what stands out to me on this one.
Yeah, it definitely has that fruit pie Spider-Man ad thing going on. And I'll just jump in just as a nostalgia piece. Remember back when they would occasionally advertise movies in comics, and they have an upcoming ad for The Dark Crystal coming this Christmas to a theater near you. And I thought, wow, that is about as 80s gets. Dark Crystal Jim Henson movie gets a full page ad right after the bulletins. I mean, that's again very 80s, and it just kind of reminded me of they used to every once in a while they drop a movie ad in here. Or as we get into the 90s too, or the late 80s, early 90s, it's a lot of this is available on VHS ads, but this one in here was actually for a theatrical release. Coming to the movies. So I thought that was fun.
Yeah, I like that though. Those are good nostalgia, good points in time on that one. And the Dark Crystal, I liked it. It was one of those movies too that kind of scared me in a way.
Yeah, that was a creepy thought.
Kind of just a weird, darker vibe on it with puppets, but really cool done, and just amazing what was done for that movie and how they put that all together.
It was a good one. Well, Pat, I want to thank you for coming down here to the Temple of Longbox and being the second guy. If you find Clinton around here anywhere, do let me know.
I will. I'll do some searching, but if he's helping you clean, that's okay.
And go ahead and tell the listeners where they can chat with you online if they would like to.
Well, Jared, I'm glad you asked. You can find me on the X at Kristatos01, or you can find me also hanging out in the Longbox Crusade. Just listen to some of the podcasts that we do here, and you will hear me on those as well.
Awesome. Thanks again for being here, and we will continue this adventure in the near future. Okay, folks, that's it for this episode of Indiana Jones and the Comics Crusade. I have been Jared Albrecht, the Yard Sale Artist. You can find me on X, Facebook, or Instagram at Yard Sale Artist, or you can check out my artwares at www.theyardsaleartist.com. We here at the Longbox Crusade appreciate you listening, and you can give us some feedback at Longbox Crusade. X, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, it's all at Longbox Crusade. or you can give us a phone call and leave a voice message at 707-532-5269. That's 707-532-LBOX. I want to give a special shout out to the Crusaders Club members who help out behind the scenes to keep these shows coming your way. If you'd like to join their ranks, just go to www.patreon.com/LongboxCrusade. One more big shout out to Joe November, who put together an awesome beat for this show. If you want to know more about Joe, just look up Joe November on SoundCloud, Bandcamp, social medias, pretty much anywhere you can look for cool music. You should search for Joe November. And speaking of Joe, let's give a listen to the complete jam he put together for this show as we wind our way out, back up from the tomb and into the real world. Catch you next time.
We named the dog Indiana. You are named after the dog?
Got a lot of fond memories of that dog.
What did you find, Junior?
Junior? Dad?
Geez, what does it always mean? This Junior. What's his name? Henry Jones Jr.
Like Indiana.
May we go home now, please?